My name is Ella Wright, and I am 15 years old. I live in a cozy little town called Maplewood, where the streets are lined with maple trees that burst into vibrantly colored leaves every fall. There is something magical about this place, especially as the leaves turn amber and crimson, painting a picturesque scene that seems plucked straight from a storybook. I have always thought of myself as a bright spark in my family, someone who loved to create, who loved to share laughter with those around me. My family would often gather in our warm living room, filled with the scent of freshly baked cookies, their warmth wrapping around us like a snug blanket, while laughter echoed from every corner, creating a cocoon of love and safety. It used to be my favorite domain, a sacred sanctuary. My older brother, James, is 21 and has always been my protector. An unyielding fortress, he was my shield against the world's harshness, even when that world felt utterly constrained within the walls of our home. Even though he had stepped into adulthood, he still found the time to indulge in silly games with me, sliding into a gleeful, childlike state that made my heart warm with joy. I treasured those moments more than anything else. They were engraved in my mind like the timeless memories of fairy tales. Yet, everything changed the summer before my 15th birthday. With all the excitement and chaos that comes with family gatherings, we had a series of visits from younger cousins, their energy vibrating through our home and discordantly shattering the harmony I had come to cherish. Most notably, there was the youngest one, a tiny bundle of joy, just a year old, who seemed to effortlessly steal every ounce of attention in the room. I could remember the moment vividly. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and suddenly, I found myself slowly drifting into the shadows whenever they arrived, retreating to a corner of the living room, a spectator of joy rather than a participant. The laughter that once harmonized with my own seemed directed solely at this little being, an innocent tyrant who enchanted all of my family, their eyes sparkling with delight as they cooed and fussed around her. I would sit there, perched silently on the edge of the couch, feeling the sting of isolation wrap around my heart like a vice, watching as every family member transformed into giddy children around the baby. "Look at her," my aunt exclaimed, her voice rising with awe. "She's so adorable." The room seemed to resonantly echo with sighs of admiration, every sound punctuated by joyous laughter and fluttering hearts. "Come on, Ella," my Uncle Mark shouted over the din. "Come play with your cousin." His voice rang out with the same passion others showed towards the tiny girl. Yet, whenever I tried to peel myself away from that dim corner, my feet would feel like they were glued to the floor, hesitating under the weight of the stairs that followed the moment I stepped into the limelight. My skin prickled with discomfort, a cold sweat forming on my brow as panic washed over me. I could hear my mother call out, "Ella, could you please hand her one of your stuffed animals?" The words felt like a blow, a jab that sank deep into my being. Panic surged through me at the thought of giving away my beloved toys, comforting companions from years of bedtime stories and nocturnal fears. The dappled hues of sunlight oozed through the window, spending its warmth on the array of plush creatures that sat steadfastly on my shelf as I scoured the room with wide, pleading eyes. My stuffed animals were my comfort, my companions during tough times, and now I was being told to share them with a child who would likely not understand how important they were to me. "But they are mine," I murmured softly, a protest barely hanging on my quivering lips as my heart raced. I remember the sensation of sitting on the plush couch, watching the glimmer in my mother's expression as she flipped her attention back to the little tyrant in her arms, a tiny scepter of innocence ruling over my family. The moment I hesitated, my mother frowned and insisted, "No, give her the big one." Each command pierced through me like shards of glass, deepening the sense of loss that coiled around my heart. I felt as if I were fading, becoming less significant, while my family swirled around me, immersed in vibrant hues of excitement. It was as if I had become a mere apparition. I glanced at my small collection of stuffed animals. There was Mr. Cuddles, my bear with the tattered ear, and Snickerdoodle, the bunny with cheerful pink accents. Each of them had a story, a little piece of my life entwined in their stitches. Anguish bubbled within me as I imagined a cooing infant grabbing them with sticky hands, drooling on their plush bodies, without any care for the memories they held. I could feel tears hotting my eyes, threatening to spill over the fragile dam I had constructed. "Can I at least keep one?" I finally choked out, my voice wavering, heart thumping loudly in my chest. Before my mother could reply, I watched her expression change. It was a shake of the head, so dismissive that it sent fresh waves of bitterness coursing through me. "Ella, don't be selfish. She's just a baby." I wanted to scream. I wanted to let the tide of emotions surge out of me, to remind everyone that I was here, that I mattered. Yet the longer I stayed quiet, the more invisible I became, the more my family poured their attention into that cherubic face. It gnawed at me with every laugh that rolled out echoingly from their lips as they cooed and cuddled. I had watched the once warm laughter metamorphose into a sinister taunt, a bitter reminder of my fading place in this family, and I felt anger swelling within me, a fire that begged to be acknowledged. It flickered violently in my gut, burning every thought of what family used to mean. My heart raced as I mentally unraveled my surroundings, taking in the vivid descriptions of the room I had once cherished. The floral-patterned curtains, the knitted blankets tossed casually on the back of the sofa, and the family photos that lined the walls like guardians of memories past. Everything felt different now, casting shadows where light had once reigned. Perhaps it was the baby's innocence that awakened something darker in me, a primal urge to fight back and reclaim the space I had once confidently inhabited. A plan began to take form in my mind. It twisted into existence like a faint whisper in the night, urging me towards a path that felt like a release from my anguish. I wanted to make my family understand that I would not be replaced by a mere baby. I would show them. I wanted to reclaim my place in this family, to restore my worth, and I was willing to put everything on the line to do so. "You know what?" I muttered under my breath, a storm brewing within me. "If they want to play with a baby, fine. I'll give them something to remember, but not without a fight." I could feel my resolve hardening. With every breath I took, my sense of purpose crystallized into something sharper, more focused. It was as if the very essence of my spirit was rising, banishing the shadows of despair. I wanted to animate myself like one of the fabric creatures sitting silently on my shelf, to remind everyone that I was even more vibrant and alive than they could see at that moment. As the laughter continued to swirl around me like an unwanted breeze, I took a deep breath and wiped at my eyes, steeling myself for the confrontation brewing ahead. They would remember my name. They had to. So, I waited back in the shadows with a budding plan twisting in my mind, one that would finally erase the stinging memory of being a forgotten whisper in a family that had once sung my praises aloud. I would rise above this. I took one last glance at the sweet little tyrant hugging a stuffed bear that used to be mine, and I knew this was just the beginning of shadows, the beginning of my revenge. As the sun dipped below the horizon, hues of orange and purple washed across the sky. But inside my heart, the air was thick and still, like the calm before a storm. The barbecue had faded into distant laughter, the frenetic energy of my relatives, thrumming with joy and excitement, feeling miles away, while I wrestled with emotions that twisted and churned like a storm-tossed sea. I could still hear the baby, my cousin's little boy, gleefully squealing as he played with the other children. The sound was unbearable. Each laugh seemed to echo mockingly in my ears, a reminder of my insignificance. I gritted my teeth, my nails digging into my palms as my heart thudded heavily against my ribs. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit there like a forgotten toy gathering dust. I wanted to shout, to scream, to step into the spotlight that felt so cold and dim without me. What is wrong with them? I thought bitterly, irritation swelling within me. Why can they not see me? Beneath all that chaos and color, all that joy centered around a tiny human who had effortlessly stolen the affection I craved, I started to envision something different, something bigger than myself. A spark of rebellion flared in my chest, illuminating the shadows that had lingered for so long. I had the tools at my disposal: creativity, determination, and a desire to be seen. Everything I needed to stage my comeback was already there if only I could muster the courage to follow through. The moment everyone left the barbecue, I stormed up to my room, the wooden steps creaking beneath my weight, an echo of my fury. My heart raced as I stood before my desk, surveying the treasures that lay scattered across its surface. There, in a chaotic array, were my glitter pens, sheets of colored paper, and markers, some of which were still in their packaging, untouched by time. My eyes fell on a stack of drawings I had done over the years, carefully crafted scenes filled with vibrant colors and imaginative creatures that now felt like a relic from a time when I still believed in the magic I could create. Right. This is just what I need, I whispered to myself, determination hardening my voice. I snatched up the markers, fingers dancing over their caps, my heart racing as ideas whipped through my mind like leaves caught in the wind. This will be my statement, my reclamation of all that was lost. The beauty of my craft materials electrified the air around me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt alive, a sense of anticipation prickling at my skin. I gathered my stuffed animals, those soft, comforting friends who had once been my confidants. The rabbit with silky ears, the plush tiger with faded stripes, and my beloved bear with its stitched smile. Each of them held stories, memories, and love that I wanted to showcase in a way that demanded attention. They deserve this too, I asserted softly, my heart swelling with a mix of hope and longing. You'll see, I promised them, sifting through ribbons and scraps of fabric, my mind buzzing as I began to settle on an idea. Each item I collected felt like a piece of me, part of the puzzle I was about to solve. I decided I would create a spectacular display in the main living room where everyone would gather for their next visit. I wanted them to walk in and gasp, to finally take notice of me instead of the ever-present baby. As I spread the supplies across my desk, a vision crystallized in my mind. I would make a giant poster board collage filled with everything that defined me: drawings, craft projects, awards from school, and of course, a central montage featuring my stuffed animals proudly posed as if they were the regal magic they always were to me. I could already see them in my mind, my beloved bear front and center, wearing the tiny handmade crown I found stuffed in one of the drawers that would glint in the sunlight streaming through the window. Hours slipped away unnoticed as I cut, glued, and arranged each item meticulously, my fingers nearly sore from all the effort, yet the thrill of creation pushed me forward. The colors began to pop on the board, vibrant and wild, each piece proclaiming the importance of my identity. I sang softly under my breath, a melody of defiance and fervor intertwining with my movements. With every snip of the scissors and every swath of glue spreading out, I felt the heaviness eating away at my insides lighten, bit by bit. By the time the distant evening sun slipped behind the trees, the glow from my desk illuminated the corner of my room like a beacon of hope. I stepped back, admiring my work, a vibrant tapestry of me, shining like a lighthouse amidst a stormy sea. With a smirk of satisfaction dancing on my lips, I envisioned their faces when they would see this bold declaration of self. Let them come, I thought defiantly, reveling in the moment. Let them finally acknowledge what I do. Before I drifted off to sleep, I visualized the gathering, picturing all my relatives rambling into the house. I cringed at the thought of how they might initially react. Perhaps a perplexed silence would reign at first. But then I imagined the laughter, the gasps, the murmurs of surprise. Ella, how wonderful! Why did we never see this before? I would beam, nurturing the small, delicious thrill of sweet revenge that danced in my chest. The fleeting satisfaction of that moment filled me with energy, pushing me deeper into sleep. The night came and went, my dream filled with colorful images of my family finally noticing me, finally seeing all the things I had waited so long for them to see. When the next family gathering arrived, my heart pounded with anticipation. I could hear the chatter outside, a hum of voices that vibrated with energy. I positioned myself just out of view of the door while I held the poster board close, tense with expectation. In my mind, I rehearsed the moment it would all unfold, hoping that the culmination of my efforts would not be overshadowed by the laughter that always surrounded the little one. Then, the sound of the door creaking open sent a rush of adrenaline through me. They filed in parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, the typical parade of laughter and joy. Ella, we are here, my mother called lightly, the familiar warmth of her voice dousing me with both excitement and resolve. I clutched the edges of the poster board, heart racing as I could feel each heartbeat resonating through the silence before the storm. I stepped into the living room, revealing my creation. Hello, everyone. I called, my voice barely masking the tremor of anxiety that buzzed beneath the surface. As their heads turned, I held the poster board high, a banner for all to see, a vivid panorama of who I was. What's this? My aunt asked, stepping closer, a curious glimmer in her eyes. I could feel the weight of their gazes like 1,000 tiny arrows pointed at me, and for a moment, breath caught in my throat. But all it took was one glance at my cherished bear, sitting proud with its crown, to ground me. This is me, I declared, words spilling forth like a rush of water breaking through a dam at the last moment. I stepped closer, pointing out my prize artworks, each telling a story, each moment cherished. I am an artist, a creator, someone with dreams worth noticing. The room fell into an unexpected silence, eyes wide and questions swirling in the air. What an incredible display. My uncle finally exclaimed, moving in closer as if he were drawn like a moth to a flame, inspecting the work that had once been hidden in the shadows. As the conversation picked up, a soft murmur rippled through the crowd, replacing the silence that had once filled the room. "Look at this drawing. When did she make all this?" someone asked, and that familiar sensation, the buzz of recognition, surged through me. "I didn't know you had done so much," my mother added, her tone soft but filled with warmth. The storm I had been worried about transformed into a gentle rain, washing away the envy that had suffocated me for so long. As my family gathered around to explore my display, I felt lighter, the weight of my invisibility slowly dissipating, leaving only the essence of who I was, vibrant and important. I couldn't help but smile. It was as though that little toddler had somehow lit a fire beneath me, igniting a spark that pushed me to finally reclaim my place in the family. The laughter, the acknowledgement, the newfound connection I had crafted, it was my moment. "I am seen," I thought, bursting with renewed energy. They finally noticed, and just like that, I resolved to never let their playful jealousy, nor their shifting attentions, undermine my worth again. I had found my voice, and like my beloved bear, I wore it proudly, no longer simply an observer in the story of my life. As the days passed, the preparations advanced in secrecy. I carefully mapped out everything for my family's next visit, visualizing the scene that would unfold. There was a sense of electricity in the air, a pulse that ignited each evening I spent in my room, creating the ultimate showcase of my life hidden behind the thick walls of silence. My heart raced at the thought of revealing the vibrant tapestry of who I truly was. I wanted to break free from the shadow that I felt had been cast over me for too long, the silhouette of a babysitter, the invisible girl who existed merely to serve her family's needs while her own were overlooked. I envisioned the room, the space where my life would finally breathe and come alive, decorated in a swirl of colors and emotions, popping against the pale walls. Hunched over my craft table, I attached the last piece of glittery paper to the banner that spelled out my name in bright, bold letters. I could picture it hanging center stage, a symbol of my identity, fierce and unapologetic. Carefully, I brushed my fingers over the letters, feeling the textured paper beneath, a tactile connection to myself. The vibrant hues danced beneath the light, much like the dreams that twirled within me, waiting to spread their wings. Time faded as I sorted through my collection of photos and awards, pulling out relics of past triumphs. There was the first place ribbon from the school art competition, a feather in my cap, a trophy of my passion. I had captured moments in shine and color, the canvases blooming with life. As I laid out my treasures across the living room, excitement thrummed through my veins. Each brushstroke in my artwork told a story, stories of dreams chased and moments cherished. The stuffed bears, those oversized guardians of my childhood, one with a heart stitched onto its chest, another with a patch over its left ear, were positioned proudly around the room, making sure they were seen as my companions and not just as childhood relics. Each day, as I conspired with the fabric of my memories and crafted a stage for the truth of who I was, I felt stronger, more determined to force the world to look past the surface and see, really see, me for who I was. Then, the day finally arrived. I stood by the window, my heart racing in my chest as I spotted the familiar car pulling into the driveway. The nerves bubbled up like soda fizzing in a glass, but I couldn't let fear hold me back. This was my moment. I peeked at the time, and the sweet anticipation of the ensuing chaos sent my heart into a sprint. A quick glance at my friends, who were awaiting my signal, made me smile. They were my solid ground, arms filled with unwavering support, joy bursting from their faces, reflecting back the excitement I felt. I dropped my hand in a subtle wave, and they took their positions around the living room, wearing expressions of exhilaration that mirrored my own. As the door creaked open, I felt a rush of adrenaline flood through me. The air seemed to shift. It was charged, electric, transforming what could have been an ordinary day into something that danced with the potential for growth and chaos. The moment my family stepped across the threshold, their eyes widened at the sudden burst of vibrant energy that lit the room, fresh and alive. Gone was the oppressive silence of past family visits, and in its place was a colorful explosion that reminded me of a cloud of confetti bursting across the sky. "Welcome to my showcase." My voice rang out, bold and confident, even surprising myself. It flowed from me, rich and full, like the colors I had splashed onto canvas over the years. My proclamation hung in the air, rippling through the space, wrapping around each family member and squeezing the breath from their chests. I felt the smiles of my friends behind me, their encouragement lifting me higher until I was all but floating. I began the presentation, my heart singing with every word as I welcomed them into my world. "This," I said, gesturing to a vibrant painting filled with swirling galaxies in shades of pink and blue, "is called A Journey Through Space. It represents my dreams of adventure, of exploring the unknown, breaking free from the bounds of the ordinary. Each star tells a part of my story." The laughter from my friends came like wildfire, spreading warmth and igniting the enthusiasm in the room. "Wow, Ella, you really have a way with color," one friend chimed in, nodding appreciatively. I could see my uncle leaning in closer, his brow furrowed in concentration, soaking in my words. His praise felt like hot cocoa on a winter day, warming my grit-filled heart. "And over here," I continued, gesturing to a canvas depicting a sunset-covered park awash with golden light, "I painted the Park of Memories. It reminds me of countless afternoons spent playing outside and the joy of simply being alive, celebrating little moments that mean everything." "Ella, this is incredible," my uncle exclaimed, lifting his hands in excitement, igniting a ripple of applause that sent my heart soaring. "I had no idea you had such talent. You should always show this side of yourself." I smiled, feeling something change in the air around me. The clapping hands, the delighted gasps, each sound pushed the darkness down further until the weight I had carried for so long was almost gone. My family's faces morphed, no longer expressions of confusion, but rather intrigue and admiration. I had them entranced, their eyes shining bright like my painted masterpieces. "Ella, I'm simply amazed," my aunt said, her voice warm and genuine, eyes locked onto mine with a newfound sparkle that made my chest swell with emotion. "You shouldn't keep these talents to yourself. Your creations deserve to be seen." Could it be? I could hardly believe it. My mother was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. She looked contemplative, and I couldn't read the expression on her face, but I sensed a flicker of interest creeping into her stance. But I pressed on, as I recalled the adventures I had shared with my stuffed friends, narrating the whimsical tales of them saving imaginary kingdoms or staging battles against the ferocious beasts of my mind. "Over there," I pointed dramatically, excitement crashing over me, "is Captain Curly, my most adventurous bear. He once embarked on a daring quest through the jungle of my backyard." I leaned into the story as laughter erupted from the crowd. "He encountered feral squirrels and brave ladybugs while searching for precious treasures that turned out to be shiny rocks." The chuckles erupted louder, and for a moment, I felt the shadows of the past melt away. Captivated, my family leaned closer, soaking in my words and the courage pulsating through them. It was an awakening, a reminder of shared laughter and joy, unveiling my vibrant spirit for them to see, but more importantly, for me to embrace. "Did he manage to find anything special on his adventures?" my cousin asked, eyes shining with genuine curiosity. "Of course," I replied, rolling with the moment, delighting in it like I would watching a sunrise. "He discovered a crystal that sparkled like the stars, the heart of the jungle." What started as a showcase of art turned into a narrative of who I was and who I would continue to become. The applause that followed felt like the breaking of a dam, as I shattered the silence that had weighed down on me for so long. My voice echoed through the living room, each word a vibrant brushstroke painting my story. Each adoring glance, each clap and cheer rebuilt the fractured pieces of me, the girl who existed for everyone except herself, a shadow fading into the background. I stole a glance at my mother, and for the first time I saw her eyes light up, recognizing me, the girl she had nearly overlooked in pursuit of fleeting moments of nostalgia. Was she beginning to see me? The realization washed over me that I was fighting for more than just attention. I was fighting for love, for understanding. I could finally feel the cracks in the wall I had built around my heart begin to mend as they filled with beautiful memories, hopes, and dreams, my dreams. A wave of validation buoyed me, sweeping me up, reminding me I had a place here, a voice that mattered. As I finished my presentation, the uproarious applause reached new heights, a tidal wave of recognition and joy crashing over me. I was not just Ella, the girl who babysat, but Ella, the artist, the storyteller, the dreamer, stepping into the light. The realization jolted through me. I had claimed back the space I thought I had lost. I was better than ever, and the darkness I clung to now collapsed like a house of cards, shredded by the fierce winds of love and acceptance. In that moment, I stood not only as the girl delivering a showcase, but as the powerful essence of my journey, reconnecting with family and forcing them to recognize the vibrant masterpiece that was me in the days following my showcase. A noticeable change blossomed within my family dynamics, an air of renewal that energized our home with an unexpected vibrance. Conversations that once revolved around the baby, those endless musings about gurgling sounds, first steps, and messy feeding sessions, shifted. Now, they incorporated my thoughts and passions more than I ever dared hope for. It wasn't just that they were finally noticing me, they sought my input, my ideas. It felt as if I had stumbled onto a hidden door to my existence and turned the handle, finally allowing my voice to break free from the silence of my former obscurity. I felt alive for the first time in so long. My mother, her once distracted gaze shifting from her phone to me, began asking about my school projects with a genuine interest that made my heart swell. "What are you working on in art class now?" she asked one afternoon, her smile lighting up the room. "I heard you had a showcase. How did it go?" The warmth in her voice was a balm to my previously bruised spirit, and I could feel the excitement fluttering in my chest. "It went really well, I think," I replied, my fingers tracing the edges of the sketchbook that had become my refuge. I showed the paintings I've been working on all semester. Everyone seemed to like them. The memory of standing in that brightly lit room, surrounded by my art, still played like a vivid reel in my mind. I was suddenly thrust into the spotlight and showcased the colors and textures that I had poured my soul into, and I reveled in the joy it brought me. My laughter blended with theirs, becoming part of our home's new rhythm. The voices that filled our spaces were no longer determined by the needs and whims of a tiny tyrant, but were enriched by a blend of youthful energy, including my own. I found myself smiling more, my cheeks often hurting from the joy of being included. The glaring jealousy that had once burned fiercely inside me towards the attention my baby cousin garnered melted away, bit by bit. I replaced it with an understanding. My cousins were merely caught up in their own childhood wonder, navigating the realities of their small worlds. I couldn't be angry with them for being infants in a world ripe with chaos and color. Truly, my anger had transformed into resolve. With every thoughtful question asked about my dreams, every praise woven into our conversations, I became aware that being a strong presence in my family meant nurturing a world where everyone could thrive, including myself. It wasn't just about claiming back my space. It was about building connections, about expanding that space to make room for everyone. One lovely evening, after an unusually hearty family dinner, we gathered again on the couch, the gentle glow of the living room lamp casting warm shadows against the walls. The clattering of plates and the chaotic dance of laughter faded into a soft hum of familiarity, a sense of comfort wrapping around us like a warm blanket. In that intimate cocoon, I felt something shift, a subtle but powerful openness spreading among us. James, sitting close enough for me to sense his anticipation, turned to me in a way that made me feel I was under a spotlight once more, but in a comforting way. I held my breath in expectation, and he broke the silence with a gentle smile. "You know, I really missed seeing you shine when we had all those visits from the babies." His words echoed through me, wrapping around my heart and filling it with a warmth that I had desperately needed. Instead of recoiling from the honesty of his admission, I leaned into it, allowing myself to feel the affection rooting itself between us, a new bond solidifying dangerously close to the surface. "I missed sharing my art during those times," I admitted softly, my voice tinged with vulnerability. It felt like I was hidden under a cloud. "You weren't hidden," he reassured, his earnestness breaking through my hesitations. "You just needed to remind us how brilliant you are." His honesty pulled me out of my head, unraveling whatever reservations still hung precariously over my thoughts. "I didn't think anyone noticed," I confessed, my gaze drifting away, but not from him. I glanced at my little cousin sprawled across the floor, oblivious in her quest to master the art of stacking blocks. She was innocent, bringing laughter and chaos, and yet still tugging on the tangled threads of my heart. James chuckled softly. "We are all caught up in our own worlds, but you've got this incredible talent that we should be celebrating. Why don't you show us some of your latest pieces?" In that moment, the burden of my jealousy turned to resolve, that pang of fear replaced by a steady pulse of courage. I blinked, trying to will away the sudden swell of emotion threatening to spill over. "Yes," I said, my tone growing more determined. "I can do that." As I excitedly pulled my sketchbook from my bag, the crinkled pages whispering against each other, a swell of anticipation rose within me. The binding felt familiar in my hands, each drawing a small fragment of my soul. When I opened it, I was greeted by a palette of colors, swathes of vibrant blues and earthy browns, bursts of fiery red. My most recent work, the one I had poured my heart into for weeks, stood out as a testament to my growth. "Wow, Ella," my mother exclaimed as the first image unfolded, one of my pieces depicting a tranquil winter landscape with a cozy cabin nestled among snow-laden trees. "This is breathtaking." I felt a blush creeping onto my cheeks, but as each compliment bounced off the walls, I grew emboldened. "Thank you." "I wanted to capture a sense of peaceful solitude," I explained, my fingers tracing over the delicate strokes I had labored over. The warmth filled the room as my family gathered closer, their eyes reflecting curiosity and admiration as they soaked in the narratives each piece revealed. "Did you use acrylics for this?" my mother asked, her tone brimming with intrigue. "Yeah, I experimented with glazes to add depth," I responded, the words flowing easily as if I were revealing a secret only they were meant to know. My confidence grew with every exchange, lighting that softly flickering flame of self-affirmation I had been trying to ignite for so long. "Here's one of a city's skyline at night," I continued, flipping the page to reveal a stunning vista where the sun dipped below the horizon, painted in the purple and gold hues of twilight. I wanted to convey the hustle and bustle, life in every detail. "That's incredible," a cousin gushed, leaning forward as if he could physically reach out and touch my creativity. "How did you get it to look so real?" "It's all about layering," I explained, relishing the attention, savoring the way my once muted voice now echoed with conviction. "You start with the darker shades to create the base and then build it up with lighter areas for dimension." I could feel the giddy excitement threading through our conversations, binding us together. Then, as I revealed piece after piece, I noticed the glimmers of awe in their eyes the way they leaned closer, their faces lit up by the stories my art unfolded. I had crafted this world, rich with light and shadows, where everyone could dwell and find beauty, as families should. "You really have a gift," my mother said, the proud tears brimming in her eyes holding back to not spill over in the emotional flood. "You must keep pushing yourself, exploring new mediums. There's so much potential in you." Potential. The weight of the word settled on me, lifting me and anchoring me simultaneously. "I want to go to art school someday," I blurted out, the unrefined dream crashing over my lips before I could reel it back. "I just need to keep working on my skills and building my portfolio." James nodded emphatically. "That's a fantastic goal. You know, the world needs more artists like you." His sheer belief in me felt as if he were wrapping around me like an armor, protecting my fragile dreams. "It would be a crime to keep that talent hidden." "No one will replace you. You shine too brightly for that," my mother added, turning serious suddenly, her warm eyes boring into mine like a lighthouse guiding me back to dry land through dark, murky waters. The tiny tyrant on the floor drew everyone's attention momentarily, her delightful chaos breaking up the spell we had woven between us. But instead of returning my focus to the baby, I felt grounded, anchored to my unfolding potential. I understood my place. My dreams were no longer buried under layers of resentment or jealousy. They were standing alongside my family, bright and pulsating with life. As our conversations swirled around us, braided with laughter and unspoken promises, I recognized that this moment wasn't a solitary victory. It was the beginning of something beautiful. Confidence surged within me, and yet I also realized it was rooted in love. Love for my family, for art, for connection. I acknowledged that I had unwittingly designed a new landscape for our relationships, where each of us could not only exist but thrive. I looked around, feeling my heart swell at the vibrant tapestry we were weaving together. At that moment, I recognized that we were together not just physically, but emotionally. This was a victory I would cherish forever, because I hadn't just reclaimed my space. I discovered the power within myself to create connections forged through creativity, love, and mutual respect. Time seemed to stretch within our little bubble of wonder, each heartbeat resonating with hope as we journeyed together into uncharted territories. I had not only triumphed over my past resentment, but had shaped the way I envisioned my world and the people in it. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that.